Welcome everybody to the 12 p.m. panel on customer-centric innovations. Our moderator is Warren Tristram, VP of Sales, Head of Gaming, Lottery, and Esports from Nuvei. If you have any trouble hearing, we do have headphones in the back. We encourage you to use them.
Okay. Hi guys, can you hear me? Yeah, thumbs up. Okay, fantastic. So, good afternoon. Welcome to our Payments Leader panel. This is customer-centric innovations. I'm going to introduce the panelists first, and then I'll go and give you a brief synopsis of what we're going to go and talk about and fire a few questions. Then we'll go through the questions list. We've got 40 minutes or so. If there's any questions from the floor as well, happy to go and take that. So let's, as I say, Warren Tristram from Nuvei, Head of Gaming there. We've got two operators, we've got two vendors, and we have the card schemes represented here as well. So I think it's better for them to introduce themselves. So let's go along the line, starting at the end.
Hello all, Christopher Granger with Visa. I look after all of our lottery and gaming business, so that includes most of the the operators, acquirers, and I work with the issuing side as well. Good to meet you.
Hi, I'm Leighton Webb. I'm Vice President of Sports Betting and iGaming at PayNearMe. We're a payments platform service provider. So through our platform, we aggregate every major tender type for both deposits and disbursements, which benefits operators through one integration, one settlement, one contract to streamline the payments process.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Gabriele Griesbacher. I'm Global Director in the Entain Group for Payments and Compliance. And I'm responsible for all the payment commercials, for the payment product, and leading globally about 85 payment methods and making sure that the Entain Group has great payment service available.
Well, good morning. I'm Tiago Veiga from Morum Solutions, a reconciliation software provider, global company, particularly specialized in high volume transactions industries like gambling.
Good afternoon. I'm Chris Capra. I am the Vice President of Digital Operations for Caesars. Please do not confuse me with Leighton. That's why we split ourselves away, put our pictures next to each other. So
is that a hair comment?
My teams are responsible for pretty much everything that you see on the Caesars app across all the 21 districts that we're in.
Fantastic. Thank you, guys. So let's just understand why we're here and you guys have selected to come and join this session. I think firstly, before I do that, I do think that we have a really strong panel here, great representation from across the industry. So I'm sure this is going to be an interesting next 30, 40 minutes or so. So customer-centric innovations. Operators struggle with the customer-first payment journeys their players are used to in other e-com experiences as they battle to acquire casual bettors expand into the general market. How close are we to emulating successful experiences, and should operators take action to match internal procedures from e-commerce models outside our industry? What gaming-specific technologies are required to function in this industry with extremely tight regulations? So that's what we're going to go through and discuss. So I'm going to fire, and these are open questions, guys, so please jump in as you wish. First question for the panel. Does gaming actually struggle with customer-first payment journeys? How do we generally compare against other e-commerce experiences? Who'd like to take that first?
I'm going to go first because I'm taking the contrarian point of view here today. And I'll start with the premise here is that we are, by nature, not e-commerce companies. We are, our gaming organizations have more in common with the banking industry, more in common with Wall Street and trading than we do with, say, Amazon or an e-commerce platform. So I'm going to put that out there, and I'm going to come from that angle. So I'll open it up.
Well, I'm happy to take that because I'm with you right now. I always say that Morum Solutions, specialize in high volume, a lot of payments and a lot of volume industry. So e-commerce being one of them. So we work with big e-commerce marketplaces, see what they do. Some big e-commerce traders on their own, and obviously gaming companies, big and small. And the first thing I would say is I would like to propose almost a joke, which is like, guess what's my job type of game, which is like, hello, my job, in a daily basis, I manage 80 payment methods, someone said, global operation, millions of deposits and withdrawals every day, safeguarding regulations. Where do I work? HSBC, JP Morgan? No, I'm a globally, tier one operator with global operations. So, yeah, no. So that's so. I don't think it is. Is my mic working?
It is.
guys?
It's working.
Oh
You're
yeah,
good.
sorry. Yeah. I'm too egocentric. No, so that's exactly my point. I 100% agree with you, and it's actually fascinating that you try to compare it with e-commerce because it's clearly not the same.
We're not e-commerce, so does anybody have a corollary point of view?
Yeah.
That surprised me, and maybe half the audience, I would have thought.
No, yes, definitely. I'm not 100% agreeing to that.
That's good. We like debate.
Well, in general, I think we are after the same customer base, and I think it's always down to the customer, and this is what we're actually serving. This is where we want to make money as well. I think it's one of our major kind of purpose why we are sitting here and why this nice conference is going on today, right? In general, I think customers actually have a specific need. They have specific demands as well, and it doesn't matter what industry they're actually attracting. If you buy some shoes, some clothing, or if you set a bet, in the end, what is a very critical moment in that journey of a customer is the payment. So the payment need to work, the checkout need to work, and this is creating trust. And we are kind of really focusing on this trust of a customer because this will actually initiate a subsequent payment, a subsequent purchase, will bring money into the organization. And this is why I wouldn't agree it's not e-commerce. I think we are all kind of in an e-commerce environment. The more and more we interact with the internet and with different channels, I would say, whatever the internet point 2 is going to be. And this is where I see we all kind of basically go after the customer, and this is the most important in my opinion.
So can I interrupt? Sorry, just to go back to Chris then. He put it out there that it's not e-commerce. What are we exactly? Or is it because Caesars is omni-channel, looking at a retail environment? Is that where more of the focus or the interest is? Just help explain what you opened with there, Chris.
Well,
Oh, go for it.
if I may.
Do you want?
can tell you
What I was saying is that we're fundamentally there's a difference here. We're a depository account. Customers are putting money into our sites and our apps, trusting us with that money. They want that money to be available to them when they want it, and they want to be able to use that money to transact interactions with us whenever they want to do it at any time of the day, according to what they determine. So we're trusted with their money, and we have to provide it back to them forward and backwards whenever they want it. So,
But that's in the
Amazon's not paying out anybody except for maybe some vendors, but it's not my expectation that it's a two-way channel with them.
Okay, so that's slightly different. Later.
Yeah, so I would add to that, closer along the lines of what Gabriele is saying is, what is Caesars? What is BetMGM? It's entertainment. That's how people view you, and that's how they think about you. It's not e-commerce. It's much broader than that. And along those lines, there's a certain expectation amongst the consumer that they're going to have a quick, seamless, easy experience. They're not going into it thinking about what's happening behind the scenes, how's the money moving, what that experience is. And I think part of the problem is first of all, there's a large gap, a large range of experiences between operators. They're not obviously on par in terms of what that experience is. So that's question one I think we need to solve. And I think it really starts with design, right? It's about being pixel perfect. It's about communicating clearly to the consumer and setting those expectations. And I think part of the problem is it's viewed as a technology solution and not a design solution. It's as much a design problem as it is a technology problem. And I don't think we as an industry think about it as a design problem. And that's really what it is, because the consumer, just last thought here, has that expectation. Again, it's entertainment. If they have a bad experience, they're going to jump. They're going to go somewhere else very quickly. There is said differently, a very low tolerance for a bad experience because they'll just go do something else.
But isn't it because of the outcome, what is expected by a customer? It's a different behavior, what we have in the gaming gambling space, because when you onboard a customer, a very fresh one, right? So he's out of intention, he got a promotion, he's out with friends, this is why he is actually setting up a gambling account, right? He got the motivation to do so, and then he's setting up his account, but I would say a certain percentage of these new customers are not even sending you a new deposit, where when you go into e-commerce environment in different kind of retail shops, I would say, right? The expected outcome is slightly different because you fill your basket, you go into the checkout journey, and then you purchase something which is delivered a few days later, right? But our experience is slightly different because you create basically a wish, expectation, something where a customer is expecting winning from, right? So it's a different journey. This is where I think this is how you can't 100% compare it with each other, but the customer could be potentially the same because you, Lethan, buy yourself something e-commerce wise, but you could also have a gambling account where the interaction is happening in seconds.
So can I maybe draw Granger in? Granger, you maybe have a better purview of other industries as well. So to hear the controversial point of e-commerce versus not e-commerce, from your perspective, where do we sit?
I'd say from my perspective, and I think, I mean, as we sit here, we're 5 years in, right, since password repeal, and I think about it and look at like the experience. The customer experience 5 years ago was terrible, at least when it came to debit cards and credit cards. So approval rates were 50% at that time, 50, 60%. Now they're north of 90%. So that's where I think, to your original question, is like, how does that compare? You know, when you're looking at an e-commerce versus, you know, gaming and entertainment, is that now we're at least closer. That expectation is that when a consumer pulls out their Visa card and they put it in there, they want it to work. They don't like, they use it for everyday life, and they expect when they put it in there, they've got, you know, money in their checking account. It should work. So thankfully, our issuers for the most part are on board now and approving those transactions. So that's where I think that, you know, the consumer's expectation is now being more closely met to the Amazons of the world.
So the gap is being closed, but we're not exactly there yet. There's still some distance to go, would you say?
There is some distance to go, particularly for credit issuers. So if you're a bank and you have credit, and you know you're loaning money to an individual to go off and spend the money that you're loaning to them, there's some credit issuers that just aren't comfortable with that. Like they say, they just say, I'm not comfortable with loaning money to someone to gamble. So I get that, and so if credit approval rates are never going to be 90%, they're going to be 60, 65%, which is where they're at today. On the debit and reloadable prepaid side, where it's an individual's own money in their bank account, we should be expecting that those are being approved at near where they're at, near 90, 92%.
So
Just to clarify,
sorry.
the 90 to 92%, but that's 90 to 92 of people who enter the information. There are many, many people who drop at the top of that funnel. They don't get to that point, and I think that's where the gap is, from the top of the funnel. So once they're at the commit stage, you've got them, assuming that the transaction is going to be approved, and we've made great progress there. I'm focused in on there's a huge number that don't get to that stage for a variety of reasons.
But I can tell you, Chris, like what we've seen and how, as operators, we respond to what's going on in the marketplace. So early on, when we realized, all right, our approval rates for cards are going to be so low, we changed the way we messaged to our customer when they were actually putting their card in. We started to look at the bins and block them and say, hey, this card's not going to work, before they hit accept and get a bad journey that says, no, your card is not valid, or your card cannot be used. Last year, we changed that wholesale because we were above 90% and we were getting fewer failures, so that we just loaded everything up and allowed them to come through and fail naturally, because that wasn't the majority of the experiences that customers were having. And those are the ways that we tweak, and we're constantly looking internally at what our customers are experiencing and how we're messaging back to them, or how we can actually enhance that for them.
Can I maybe just ask then? So the gap is closer, is what I think I heard. We've got some challenges fundamentally with the banking institutions, and I think, Leighton, as you were saying, that I think that gap is also at the top of funnel before we even get to the cashier. So I was going to say those are some challenges. Outside that, and if we step outside the actual card schemes and the associations, there's other payment methods as well. What other challenges are we faced with within the industry from an e-commerce perspective? From ACH banking, I was going to say, just stepping away from card acceptance approvals, having a push payment which is at the customer's discretion rather than necessarily waiting upon a third party like the issuer to approve.
Well, I think, drawing from e-commerce and actually what our customers' expectations today is, everything is instant. I have a case where I got a complaint on a Sunday from a customer who didn't get their money, and because they withdrew from ACH at 5:30 p.m. on a Friday. And I'm like, they I have to explain to them that's not the way it works, and it's not what you were told when you withdrew it. The money left their account and is pending. But what I was going to say is that customers want their money now, and we want to get their money onto the account as fast as possible. When they withdraw, we want to get their money back to them as fast as possible. But to do that, and this is where we differ massively from e-commerce, we have checks and balances that we have to go through. We have regulations that we need to move. We need to make sure that withdrawal is fine. We need to make sure the betting is fine, that they meet certain criteria. They're not trying to launder money through by making minimum bets, or there's no fraud or abuse. So all those checks we have to do before we can release that money or put that money into the account. And the timing for that is shrinking dramatically. And whereas 3-4 years ago, that could have been, up to 48 hours at a time. Now we're down to less than an hour, or we're into minutes, and profiling customers so that it becomes instant for them.
But this is also depending on the development of the payment methods, which we've seen in the last years. I remember 3 years ago when the journey really kicked off, with just a handful of payment methods which have been available to our customers in our industry, I would say, right? And what we've seen in the last years was a very huge development, and we've seen it in the conference here as well. There's a large expression of very creative solutions out there about how we actually trade with payments. But in essence, and when we look into the very details, it's really, and I'm coming back to my initial kind of kickoff, is like it's about customer choice and the demand of a customer and what they actually would select in their day-to-day experience. What do they trade with? How they actually communicate with e-commerce environment. I call it again e-commerce. So if a customer has by nature 2 free payment methods, by nature what he's using on a day-to-day basis, just can take it from my own kind of daily behavior. They're just cards, maybe a PayPal, and then maybe as a third one, but that's actually already a lot. And this is how I actually administrate between my finances. And from all of these payment methods which are offered, you can have the largest cashier ever with 15, 16 payment methods. We've seen it in the very past. But ideally, I think most of the payments where they are processed in our industry, and I've seen it in other e-commerce areas as well, because of my previous experience, is done by 2 payment methods. It's like by customer behavior and customer choice. This is what we need to be careful about, and this is what we actually need to offer to our customers in a best fashion. And as Chris just mentioned, it's about the speed in processing, and this is what in our industry in particular is requested by customers.
But I think this is where we were coming from, the angle where it is virtually impossible to provide, or at least it will be for a long period of time, to provide that experience. Think it through, like you log in, Tommy Hilfiger, you shop, you don't even need to log in, put any input, you just check out as a guest, no information is traded, and I buy my asset, a couple of days later I get that delivered, so it's all instant. If I want to cancel my order, I press cancel order, that's it, happy days, order is cancelled, money is back. While in gaming, you cannot provide that experience to the client, the instant withdrawal. If I want to make an instant bet right now, I'm with my mates watching some football, I want to bet now, I can't. So the journey is never going to be seamless, and going back to that top of funnel, I think there's always going to be, and even if it's the design is brilliant, let's say we design, between us, we design the most incredible, pixel perfect, amazing journey that creates trust, and people have already overcome the trust issue of giving money to a gaming institution. There is the regulation pressure forces you to be slow, and I guess the dogma of treating gambling as an online company then is complex. Creates complex scenarios.
Are we saying that it's always going to be different? I think the controversial start on the fact that we're not e-commerce. Chris was talking about checks and balances are required, and so are we ever? And we're talking about potentially trying to close the gap. What needs to be done in order to go and make sure that payment experience, if we want to be customer-centric, can actually be more aligned outside gaming, or are we always going to be different and we just have to accept that? Or is there something more that can be done in order to actually try and emulate what happens outside gaming?
I think it has to be. I mean, especially if you take iGaming, as that gets to more mass market, again, because that's what the expectation is. And there's a lot in the funnel that can be collapsed. Take KYC, right? If I have a banking relationship, that bank knows everything about me that's needed for KYC. Why is KYC needed? Why isn't there one authentication to pull that data and get rid of that KYC process? So there is a lot of inefficiency and waste in the experience that I believe will be collapsed and more efficient over time. I think it'll change dramatically.
Can you see, I don't know, from an operator perspective, removing KYC?
It's not removing it, it's getting the data from a different place. And again, it's
Okay.
about that experience. And back to the design piece, it's, why are we sending players to a non-native experience that pops a web browser that sends them to an experience that breaks the brand trust? Little things like that, every click at AOL, every click we put someone through in the gaming channel, we'd lose 50% of the audience. So every click does matter. Every unnecessary pixel does matter that's going to flow right to your conversion and your engagement. So there will be a collapsing. This data is out there. Even if you take the, creating a banking site, I can very easily in a couple of minutes create multiple banking sites and send you a wire almost instantly. I mean, we're not at that level in terms of user experience.
But it's a good question. So why is KYC so important for gaming gambling, right?
I'm not saying it's
as
not
it just,
important.
No, I'm just saying, why is it so important? Because I think you can nowadays set up, as you just said as well, faster a bank account than a gambling account. And I think as a regulator and as a gambling operator, you know more of a customer than a bank would ever know.
It's because how we framed it. We broke it as a discrete step when it's really included in all of this other
But
information
why
that's
is it
available.
necessary? I need to do it on my end customer.
Exactly.
So, Chris, can I draw you in on the fact that gaming is high risk? If you understood that the operators were removing their KYC requirements, does that give you the jitters or?
Oh, certainly, but that's not our call. That's that'd be the regulator's call on AML requirements and KYC. So, but yes, I mean we as a payment network, we appreciate that gaming regulators require so much in this space. It makes our job easier to be able to allow acquirers to onboard, right? So we get more comfortable, the issuers get more comfortable. We all comply with federal laws and state laws. So I think we're
Yeah, but just to be clear, I don't think we're saying to get rid of
Right.
KYC.
Okay.
We're saying the information that's on my phone, you know everything about me. It's already there.
That's correct,
It
yeah.
already resides somewhere. Why is the consumer having to re-enter that information when it can easily? I mean, it's no
Understood.
different
Okay.
that if I want to get a car loan right now. I mean, it's just a couple of screens. They pull the
Correct,
data
yeah.
from somewhere else. We're forcing the user to re-enter data that already exists.
Yeah, but the process of and that's exactly where I was coming from. The process of regulation is following the opposite side, and that's what I'm trying to say. It's almost like putting more and more and more barriers to entry rather than removing them. So some other industry, and that's going back to your point. It's that perception of high risk. I think that's one of the areas that we need to work really harder in the industry is the perception of the high risk versus the reality of the high risk. What does that really mean? There's so much information already. There could be, and there are shared platforms of identity already out there that are working really hard, digital IDs, etc. Let's say, close your eyes 50 years from now with blockchain technology progressing, all of those things. Yes, everything is going to be more, but I won't be here at that point to benefit from that. And it would be great if by pulling together good conversations like this, highlighting the problems, but then someone has to do something.
Well, there's nothing in your wallet that is not on your phone right now. There's not a credit card, your driver's license. Most of us probably have a photo of it on our phone, passports, things like that. I live for the day that there's nothing in my back pocket, ever. Again, I hate it. I'm a minimalist when it comes to wallets. But there's design friction on the inbound and outbound of our platforms right now. To get in, we have to verify who you are. That's obviously we don't want anyone under 21 that's not legal to gamble on our sites. We don't want anyone that's prohibited from gambling. We don't want anyone that's been excluded, self-excluded from that. So those are really important checks that we have. But we can learn from e-commerce in the fact that how do we make that journey faster or seamless for the customer when all that information, as Leighton was saying, is present in another form, and they don't need to type it back on. And I'm horrible on my phone. The other side is, yes, on the back end, and how do we automate some of the withdrawals? How do we use technology, AI, whatever, to actually check that. We know what we know our good customers. We know this person, has made 100 withdrawals with us. Everything is good. We never charged back. Nothing ever issues with his or her gambling. That should be fast. As a land-based operator as well as a digital operator, you walk into a casino, you put $100 into a slot machine, you win, you get your slip out, you go to the cage, you go to the ATM, you get your money. It's instant. Maybe a few minutes, but it's there. You know it's there. You can hand that slip to a valet and give him a tip. That's present. It's the currency flow is there, and that is one of those expectations that we're dealing with on the digital side. Of hey, when I'm in your casino, I get my money right away. No hassle. No questions asked about that, and we're trying to get to that. So using technology, using different platforms to help us build customer profiles to do automated checks faster than we can do as a human being, to allow that money to flow through faster back to the customer's account is really important. Educating customers, and educating customers on what to do. We have direct to debit that's instant. Most of our customers, their withdrawals are low. They're not tens of thousands of dollars. We can process them quickly right to their debit card, and the money is there almost within minutes. So as newer payment methods come on that are faster, we are wholeheartedly, part of what we're doing is shifting our customers into those, because we know it'll be a better experience for them, and we know that they'll get their money faster and be happier.
Coming to these points, and I think they are very valid points, this is a very clear differentiator from the gambling industry compared to any other, I would say, is the withdrawal journey. Because there is actually none other industry where you get money back from a system, right? There is mainly all of the payment methods, which I'm actually experiencing and aware of, is everybody's focusing on getting money in. You purchase something, you pay something, but a lot of payment methods are not even prepared to send it back tech-wise. That's the problem, and this is where the speed in processing is as well created. It's like the customer is expecting in that journey, in our industry as well, to get it out of the system. Where in a casino, you go to the cage, you get the money paid. Where in an e-commerce environment, I think that's the complexity which we are dealing with, that also the technology in the payment instruments is not prepared 100% for the backwards journey. You have returns,
we've got
chargebacks, but not the other way.
Well, Gabriele, the last time I withdrew from your platform, by the time I logged into my banking account, the money was there, because you use Visa Direct.
This is a new technology
It
now,
is,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
So
Granger.
This is
I
new.
love self-promotion.
A lot of other payment instruments are not actually prepared for that so well.
Understood.
So it's interesting. You're saying that gaming is unique from a perspective that from a two-flow, having the withdrawal as well.
Definitely.
Okay. And so do we lead in that regard then, on the fact that?
I would say we push as well the finance industry in order to make sure that this journey is as well created, right, and this is offered.
Isn't the parallel though? I was thinking as you were speaking. Venmo. I mean, it's the same thing, right? The expectation is I want to send money to you or to myself. I expect those funds to be there if I choose, instant delivery, immediate. Isn't that the consumer expectation?
But is it a withdrawal or is it a deposit? What do you send peer-to-peer to me?
Is it sending? I'm sending money to someone, and it came up to use the analogy in gaming. I'm sending the money to myself, or I'm sending the money in the case of the example of Venmo to you. Is the consumer expectation? Maybe at the highest level, I would argue that in today's world, the expectation is everything is immediate. Yes. People do not understand, they don't understand or care, frankly, about the intricacies that an operator has to review a transaction for fraud. They don't care about that.
Until
they
it goes wrong.
So that's what we're trying to aim for. I totally get and understand why those checks are in place, but the expectation is everything is immediate. And that's the bar that is being set by the consumer. And so the goal is how do we close that gap as much as possible?
Well, and we are getting closer, but to Chris's comment before with that one example, I mean, consumers don't know that in that example, on Friday afternoon, Friday evening, he did a withdrawal via ACH. Well, that's not going to be there until Monday, right? So it's like, I think if that. So I think we as an industry need to do maybe a better job in how we communicate to players. There's differences here. This is going to be faster. This is going to be immediate. This is going to take 2 to 3 days.
But if you allow me to add something again, Gabriele, there are very similar problems in other industries as well that we work with every day. So whenever things like forex, but not just forex. Any exchange, investment platforms, asset managements. It's money in and money out, and you'll see that they are now also e-commerce businesses as well. Most of them are also instant apps, exactly the same gamification, etc. It's all with CFDs, etc. And they are also our clients because their problems are exactly the same as your problems. And going back to the instant, I guess the difference is because they are perceived to be financial institutions, the client accepts that it's not instant. The client accepts that it might take some time for me to withdraw my gains that I've made on the platform, etc. While in gambling, I guess the communication from the operator or even the payment methods is not there. So I guess the frustration of the client, again, going back, everything is instant these days, yes, of course, but then there's also the expectation versus reality, and that is where I think, from an operation point of view, if you explain, people understand. They might not want that, but they will understand, and that's
Well, they have to understand because there's not a choice, I would say, right? But what we get feedback from our customers is they actually tell us, you get my money faster in than I get it out, right? And it's maybe not because of the technology. I think this is now created in the last years, was really a lot of development. But because of these risk checks, because of additional kind of requirements, it takes longer, right? But the customer expectation from its nature, they always kind of want it instant because you rip it off quickly from a bank account, but I get it really slow back. So what's the problem?
Do
What-
either Caesars or MGM, do you communicate that to the player? So I initiate a disbursement. Do you say it's under fraud review? It's under
Yeah.
review? Okay,
Yeah,
so they
yeah,
know. So you're setting
yeah,
the
we do.
expectation.
Who
Okay.
is reading text in the internet?
Yeah,
And they're communicating it to set the expectation.
the gap actually especially with the deposits is that we're all using ACH services that are guaranteed. So what the customer sees as instant is not. We're not getting the money right away. Or one of our partners is guaranteeing that money and putting that money in, but that money's actually not coming out of the customer's account right away because it's running on the ACH rails. So that's a little misconception that they have.
Does that not change with the RTP and the greater adoption? So currently payouts are RTP generally. I think I know that from a Nuve perspective, close on to 90% of our payouts are RTP. They're instant.
Yeah.
Pay-ins are subject to the actual issuers subscribing to the RTP network.
Yeah,
so
and
that gap will close.
Yeah, but we've set that up so that it looks instant to the customer. We're taking the risk, or our partners are
Sure.
taking a risk on that. I will actually concede one point here is that there was one time when the gaming industry decided to try to be and emulate e-commerce, and it went horribly wrong.
And when was that?
It was when we decided to eat the costs of our payments in and out versus as most e-commerce do, and paying the fees for our payments transactions rather than pass those on to the customers.
Is that a good idea? Should you
Go.
have the okay. So I'm conscious we've got 7 minutes left here or so. Maybe one more question. We might go to the floor if anybody's got any questions, and round up with the closing question. But I wanted to know: can the payments journey improve the experience for the players beyond the payment transaction? Any ideas or thoughts
It's
on
one
that?
and the same. The player doesn't make a distinction between the app and the payments journey. It's the product. They are interacting with their brand. So they don't make a distinction between the two. It's not a, hey, I'm in the app, filling out a bet slip, and now let me go over to this other thing and make a deposit. To the player, it's the same thing.
So I think you said it Leighton earlier on the fact that your mobile phone, there's lots of information that pertains to the actual customer or the player. By using that method, getting that insight, can that be used beyond the payment journey? I'd like to think yes.
100%.
Yeah. Okay. So how about that practice? In fact, I don't. From an operator perspective, do you guys do that? Are you planning to do that?
Well, I would say yes, definitely, because data, I think, is king, and this is what, in particular in the Entain, BetMGM side, we are taking care of that. We, first of all, get as much as information of our customers, first of all, from a marketing perspective, and how we make convenient services into our environment, right? So it's definitely a very big topic for us as well in order to serve the customer and identify his needs.
A little bit like Big Brother watching you. They can second guess them, which is a good thing.
It's everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, we're going to be wrapping up in 5 or 6 minutes. Are there any questions from the floor that we can take? If not, not to worry. We've got other questions to go. But any questions from the floor? No? Okay, let me ask you guys this then. What does the future hold with regards to help the players to seamlessly progress through the payment journey? How do you see the payments process improving within iGaming, e-commerce in the next 12, 24 months? What's on the horizon? And maybe from a yeah, Chris,
Actually,
please.
I was going to ask a question to your question in a little bit different way. Is that, are we, like, I know we're trying to get to seamless payments and everything seamless, but do sometimes we, and this I'm going to ask to our two operators here and possibly our colleague from across the pond, like, do we sometimes make it too easy? And from the lens of fraudsters also know it's easy. And so are there, in other regions, are we doing other things like two-factor authentication and validating who that is so that we can keep fraudsters out? And so are there learnings in other parts of the world that we can bring to the States and make it easier? And sometimes that might mean that it's not as seamless, but we might be able to understand who that customer is and maybe, stamp out some fraud.
So can I throw that back at you from a 3DS perspective to go and offset liability?
I think that's a good question. I mean, we don't have the offset of liability in the U.S., but should operators be using 3DS in the States just because it can be a more secure transaction? Every time I have that conversation with operators, they're like, no, we don't want to add friction. But if you can actually authenticate that cardholder better, wouldn't that be better? I get it. Nobody wants to be the first. But if everyone did it, wouldn't that be better?
So
If everybody would do that, I think we would actually jump on that as well. I can just compare it because from an Entain perspective, we have the lens of the US American market, and we can see it in Europe as well, where it's already mandatory because of the PSD2, right? And at the beginning, we've been very much nervous about when it was enforced in Europe that this could cause a lot of customer friction. We lose a lot of customers, and there was a lot of nervousness around it. But the advantage was that it was applied across all industries. So there was no exception from a customer perspective that you, as Chris, has not to learn how PSD2 works and how actually two-way customer authentication with your app on your phone works, right? Because it doesn't matter what you do, you had to use it, right? So it was like educated and trained.
So Gabby, what's the impact of PSD2 in Europe? How has that negatively impacted, or has it really impacted at all to Granger's
as I said,
point?
I think the advantage was that everybody had to use it across all industries, right? So there was no exception that it was only for the gaming gambling, because I can understand when you, Warren, for example, just do some purchasing in whatever you buy, right? And then you do a gambling transaction, and then you get enforced into that strong customer authentication that you don't know by that second what your password or your second authentication case was, right? And then this is dropping off the customers, right? But if you had to use it anyways, you had to learn it, and then it got natural.
Leighton.
Yeah, I just want to add that a thought that making something easier doesn't mean that you're degrading the quality of the data that you're getting about that person. I mean, look, Google and Apple are getting rid of passwords. So complexity or simplicity doesn't correlate directly with impacting the quality of the data. I just want to make that distinction. You can make something simple and still have all the information that you need about a particular user in our industry and other industries.
Okay, I'm conscious on time, and I'd like to give everybody a closing comment. So if you were to look into your crystal ball, what does the future hold, or what would you like to see from your perspective on from a payments processing to improve it? What's in your crystal ball? From the end coming along, Granger, I can see that you've got a perplexed look, so I'm putting the pressure on you
I'm gonna let Chris
here.
start first on that end. So.
I think actually more to the RTP and the closing that gap of time for the customer. We're seeing very positive impacts on that, and also taking a lot of the human element out of what those checks and balances, because a lot of this can be automated, profiles can be built, and things can be checked.
Okay, cool. Tiago?
I mean, from our point of view, I think what we see, and I think we're seeing that more and more on this side of the pond as well, is operators actually learning from a lot of things that were done on the other side of the pond, on the experience of more than 20 years that's been happening, and you actually have taken a lot of shortcuts. You know, one of the things that happened Europe was, especially big companies like Entain, is like, there's a problem, we have a bunch of developers, we're going to try to fix it ourselves. And here, I think you've been slightly smarter, and you're not building as much. And there's great vendors upstairs, stuff like that, good companies like Nove that solve a lot of problems, that we us as well, and help as well. So I think that's...
I love that. That wasn't a plant. Nuve solves all your problems. Anyway, Gabby.
Well, I wouldn't say there's a big crystal ball reading from my perspective, and I outlined it already. I think the customer perception, that's for us the most important, to make sure that there's a safe gambling as well in future. The Entain group is in the meantime known as well for advanced responsibility and care. This is one of our big programs which we run. And it's about having a safe gambling then in future, and this is where we need to make sure that we have as well the right payment methods as well applied to that, so that we have actually a future business as well up and running. I think that's one of the items where I see this is something what we need to take care of and make sure it's a safe gamble and that it's a a compliant environment which we are interacting with.
I'd echo that. As many people might know, the new regulation, revised regulation within the UK, it's all about responsible gambling. I think that's a really important point to go and call out, to make sure that we do that sensibly. It's an entertainment, it's fun, but we actually do so in a responsible manner. Leighton, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'll take this from the disbursement side. So I think one thing we'll see is machine learning and AI greatly reducing, if not eliminating, the need for manual review on the disbursement side of things, just to greatly expedite those payments. So I think that's going to change dramatically in terms of all the resource and effort that goes into these manual reviews to issue disbursements.
Cool. Granger.
Yeah, I think again, as I think back 5 years ago and how the payment experience was terrible then, I think it's better now. I think it's going to continue to get better. So I think, certainly that's an expectation. And it's customer choice, right? It's not just going to be cards. It's going to be other forms of payments that are going to be fast and efficient. So yeah, I think we're going to continue that way.
Okay, cool. Hopefully you found that insightful. We've got a really good panel. I certainly enjoyed listening to their thoughts, but I think that draws us to the end, and I'd like to thank you for your attention and time.
Thank you very much. There is a keynote speaking right now from Frank Abagnale in the keynote conference room upstairs.